Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories. The sound of a gavel echoed thunderously as the judge loudly proclaimed his verdict to the criminal before him. As punishment for committing high treason, we hereby sentence you, Veronica Hillsdale, to death. The people seated below whispered among themselves, discussing the court's verdict. The man in the judge's robes spoke again. Does the accused have any last words? Veronica looked up. Last words. Her words were suddenly drowned out by the sudden downpour. It began to rain heavily. She thought to herself, what would I say? The girl with purple hair sat in the rain. She seemed to be enjoying it. Tears welled up in her deep purple eyes as she spoke. Oh, right. Is love a sin? Hearing this, the blonde-haired man in the stands clenched his teeth. She continued to look straight at him with a determined gaze. The only thing I'm guilty of is loving the prince. Shameless until the very end. Upon hearing this, the crowd in the stands became chaotic and excited. Someone whispered, she's completely out of her mind. Heard the count isn't even here today. Another person replied, of course he isn't. He must be in shock. Look at what his only daughter has become. Too tired of the girl before him, the judge waved his hand to signal them to take her away. 2 soldiers in full armor escorted Veronica, but she still shouted, my love, I wish you nothing but happiness. She then turned back to look at him with a complex gaze, and proudly walked away with a mocking smile, because I'm about to be way happier than you're gonna be. They brought her before the prison cell, and the soldier shoved her forward with a spiteful tone. Get in there. She shot him a glare. Tap, tap. Suddenly she clapped her hands. Well, adjusting her hair, she asked, how was my acting? The man in front of her replied, it was flawless. Veronica held out her hand to him. Then I guess this is the end of our contract. It's time to pay up, father. Turns out this man was her father. Veronica continued, I shouldn't call you that anymore. Why is she acting so bold? It's because Veronica Hillsdale doesn't exist. Going back many years, she was born into poverty and had no idea who her father was. To pay off her mother's debt, she was sold to a secret agency known as Fiore when she was around 10 years old. The red-haired woman before her spoke up. You said your name is Lacey? Is there anything you can do well? Our little girl hadn't had a chance to answer before the woman's hand grabbed her chin and continued, at least you've got a pretty face. You'll be useful when you get older. At this point, the girl spoke up. Madam, I'm smart and there's lots of stuff I'm good at. Please don't just use me for my looks. As she spoke, Lacey clenched her hands tightly in fear, but her voice remained firm and resolute. I can do other things. Finding the child before her interesting, the woman covered her mouth and laughed heartily. Pfft, my, aren't you something? Do you have any idea what we do here? A passerby who witnessed a crime, that's one of the roles you'll be playing. From now on, you'll be an actor. At that moment, the girl was already disguised as a boy. Regardless of what role you're assigned, you'll have to play it perfectly. The woman's voice echoed in the young girl's mind. An heir who was thought to be dead, the secret child of a newly married husband, the servant of an earl, her acting skills were like none other. There are many poisoners and corpse collectors within Fiore, but actors hold the highest prestige. Then one day, a man came looking for someone who could pretend to be his daughter for a few years. Lacey wondered, wasn't he trying to take revenge or deceive someone? He just wants someone to pretend to be his kid. Ignoring all of Lacey's doubts, the man offered to pay her the equivalent of 10 years' wages. The woman laughed and said, it's suspicious but still rather tempting, is it not? You could settle your mother's debts with that amount. Thinking about the offer, if Lacey could pay off everything, she would no longer have to work at Fiore and pretend to be different people. She would be free. So she agreed to the man's proposal. For the next 6 years, her goal was clear. She was to help make the first prince the most viable heir to the throne and ensure the noblewoman whom her client, her father, had chosen would become the prince's fiancée. After that, she would simply disappear into thin air. First, she needed to ensure that everyone in Weldon knew who she was. Although her social debut was later than most due to her frail health, Veronica took high society by storm. When she finally did, that day, the prince himself asked her to dance amidst the buzzing whispers of everyone. Excellent. Everything was going according to plan, Lacey thought. She whispered to His Highness, my love, I'm going to make you the next king. When the time was ripe, Veronica's rival was introduced into the game. Where did her father find this perfect girl? The two of them didn't seem to have anything in common at all. Anyway, after pretending to compete for the prince's affection, the angel ultimately steals the prince away, and Veronica plots to poison her out of jealousy. Just like that, the beloved socialite turns into a wicked femme fatale. As planned, Veronica's little scheme fails. Because she exposed the prince to danger, however, she is sentenced to death despite being a count's daughter. Her father said to the man before him, "I have failed in raising my daughter. I am utterly desperate. I leave it to the kingdom to decide her punishment." Lacey thought that was the end of everything. But back at Fiore, "I'm back," Lacey's voice rang out. Fiore smiled. "Well done, Lacey. How was the trip in the prison carriage?" Lacey giggled mischievously. "You know me. I finished the job without a hitch. Nothing to worry about." Fiore handed her a piece of paper. "Here, take this." Lacey was puzzled. "What is it? Don't tell me it's a bonus." Fiore's words struck Lacey like lightning. "No, it's a wanted poster. You were backstabbed by your father, Count Hillsdale. Before we proceed, let me clarify some points." Perhaps Lacey became too immersed in her role and interfered with the Count's plan. But I can tell you right now that this is completely untrue. Following the Count's instructions, Lacey succeeded in uncovering the true potential of the prince and handed over the task to the fiancé her beloved father had approved. Veronica had completed what she was hired to do and then suddenly vanished without a trace. So, what do you think about the biggest scam in this country? With this, the Count would regain his reputation thanks to the prince's fiancé, and Lacey would earn a large sum of money to pay off her debts. After everything was done, Lacey planned to go somewhere where no one knew the name Veronica and live the life she always dreamed of. At least, that was what she had planned. Returning to reality, Lacey was furious when she received the wanted poster from Fiore. "I did everything just like he requested. What the hell is this? I worked my ass off for the past 5 years, and now I'm wanted for 10,000 gold coins? Why?" Fiore could only sigh. "It's because you were too perfect. It seems he's anxious about just letting you walk free." Lacey screamed. "How can you just stand there and do nothing?" Fiore replied, "Let me tell you, he offered to pay me double if I handed you over to him. You should be grateful." By now, Lacey was enraged. "Wait. What's going to happen to my debt? Is that prick doing this so he doesn't have to pay for my services?" Fiore lowered her voice to remind Lacey, "Lacey, I know this is upsetting, but you need to save yourself first." At the port, a platinum-haired woman was fleeing from something. She recalled the words of the other person. "Get to the port. There's a ship on which you can make your escape. I'm doing you this favor only because I adore you. I'll hold you responsible for this mess someday. Until then, you have to stay alive." The girl ran while glancing back. "Luckily, I was able to quickly change my appearance using this magical device. I'm really grateful to the madam." But turns out this woman was Lacey in disguise, running from a group of men wielding weapons. "My precious Lacey, you're my ticket to 10,000 gold coins. What's better than dying and giving your family some gold in the process?" Lacey cursed Fiore silently. "Damn Fiore. Everyone in that place is nothing but a bunch of double-crossing friends." The top moneymaker of Fiore. "You've earned quite a bit of gold, haven't you?" The man's voice still shouted. "Let us turn you in so we can use that reward." Lacey ran while shouting, "Where is your sense of loyalty? To hell with Count Hillsdale. How dare he use people like this and throw them out like trash?" Sprinting with all her might, Lacey couldn't help but resent Count Hillsdale. That bastard. Does he think he can pull this off without me? At her wit's end, Lacey had reached the end of the road. Before her lay the vast, endless sea. The men behind her seemed to have caught up. Their voices grew closer. "It's not like you to run away like this, Lacey. You've got nowhere to go. Just give up." While Lacey hesitated, unsure whether to jump or not, the savage men's voices were very close. One sneered, "You still don't know what you did wrong, do you? Your performance was so flawless that you made your client uneasy." At this point, Lacey couldn't bear it anymore. She didn't know what to do. Tears fell uncontrollably. Her freedom, she worked so hard for it, and it was finally within reach. She can't end things like this. A loud noise resounded. It had started to rain. One of them shouted, "What the hell? Did she just jump into the sea? We won't even be able to find her corpse in this weather." The rain poured down. Another said, "It's a whopping 10,000 gold coins. You're not going to give up now, are you?" Then he shouted, "Lacey, are you dead?" On the side of a ship, Lacey clung to the outer hull. At least those lunatics gave up quickly. The rains just about let up. I guess I got lucky. Though I did lose all my stuff. Still, throwing those Fiore brats off my track with just one bag is a pretty good bargain. I'm a little early, but I think I found the ship Madam told me to escape on. As long as no one finds out my true identity, I should be by the time she climbed up to the deck. Lacey was exhausted. In front of her, a dark-skinned man was startled as a girl suddenly appeared before him. A piercing scream echoed. Lacey cursed under her breath. It turned out this was an Iranian ship, and they were urgently searching for the girl who had just appeared. Hiding in a corner somewhere, Lacey silently prayed, "Don't come in here, don't come in here." She unconsciously backed away, not realizing she had walked into the lion's den. A man's voice sounded, "Are you a thief or a stowaway?" As he spoke, he touched her hair. "Which is it?" Behind her stood a muscular man with tan skin, golden eyes, and yellow hair. 2 years ago, Count Hillsdale was sitting in his study reading the newspaper. The Irina Empire is sending a delegation. Make sure you've made all the necessary preparations. Behind the screen, a maid was dressing Lacey, tightening the corset so much that Lacey could hardly breathe. Outside, her pretend father was instructing, "Pay special attention to Prince Halid, the head of the delegation." Lacey finished dressing and came out, wrapping her arms around her dear father. "There you go nagging again even though you've got me, the perfect daughter." Count Hillsdale's eyes showed annoyance. Lacey continued, "You're such a worrywart, father. Even though you're a perfectionist with unbelievably high standards, have I ever let you down? Stop worrying. Just be sure to pay me." Count Hillsdale replied, "You need to foster a good relationship with Prince Halid so that..." Before he could finish, Lacey interrupted him, "So that you can import goods from the West? Someone like you who operates one of the top trading companies in Weldon would never miss out on such an opportunity." She spoke with full confidence. Count Hillsdale offered praise but didn't forget to remind her, "I find my daughter quite sharp. He's not someone you should underestimate." At the party on the day of her debut into high society, people were chattering excitedly, marveling at the wealth of the neighboring country, the strong physique of the servants, and the handsomeness of the prince of the Irina Empire. He is the type of person whose mere presence commands the entire room. That's something we both have in common. This is going to be a piece of cake. Just wait and see, father. I'll show you what perfection really. Just as she was thinking this, the prince approached her and bluntly said, "You look like a dog." Lacey thought she misheard and asked, "Excuse me?" He continued, "You're practically begging for attention like a dog wagging its tail." Returning to the present, Lacey was startled to see the man before her. What's Halid doing here? Damn it. I have to come up with something. Before she could think of a way out, he spoke up. "It's been a while, Veronica." Lacey hastily denied, I think you've got the wrong person." Before she could finish, he cut her off. "Enough with the games. What are you doing on my ship?" "Wait, this ship belongs to Prince Halid of the Irina Empire? Did I get on the wrong boat?" "That's impossible." Lacey was pushed against the wall by Halid, his muscular body towering over her. "Well, have you nothing to say for yourself?" Suddenly, voices from outside came from the people searching for her. "Are you sure she entered this room?" Reflexively, Lacey suddenly attacked Halid, her hand reaching around his neck, but Halid swiftly caught her. Lacey frowned. "Does he know there's poison under my fingernails? This leaves me with no other choice. You brought this upon yourself." Thinking this, she suddenly stood on tiptoe, intending to kiss Halid. Everything happened so fast. He quickly pushed her down onto the sofa. At that moment, a man opened the door to enter. "Your Highness, did you hap?" Before he could finish, he blushed at the scene before him. A man and a woman were entwined in a passionate kiss. Lacey's leg lifted a scene that would make anyone embarrassed. She glanced sideways. How did things turn out like this? No, more importantly, the man before her continued to kiss her passionately. Lacey wondered how he could be such a good kisser. After a while, Halid finally lifted his head to look at the three men. His assistant hurriedly cleared his throat and said, "My apologies, Your Highness." Another added, "Ah, what a relief. His Highness appears fine." Another man spoke up. "Should we get ready to depart, Sir Simone?" Simone awkwardly turned away and replied, "If the patrol guard is sure he saw a mutant, then yes, we must leave at once. There's never been one spotted in Weldon before. I'll inform His Highness." Saying that, but in his heart, he was screaming, "Wait, that's not important. I just witnessed something grand." Simone was secretly delighted that there was finally a concubine. Then Halid spoke up. Simone El-Saka, call off the search. There's nothing unusual on this ship. It's best if we leave as soon as possible. I give you full authority to prepare for immediate departure. Then he turned to look at Lacey and grinned. You should see the look on your face. Lacey was looking at him cautiously. Halid continued, someone might think you were just taken advantage of, when really it was me who was jumped. Let me introduce this man, Halid Sirim Hartman, the Prince of the Irina Empire, currently visiting the Kingdom of Weldon for trading purposes. Lacey bit her lip, cursing inwardly. Shit, I can't do anything in this state. Guess I'll go for the sympathy vote instead. As if coming up with a plan, Lacey immediately put on a pitiful expression. I mistook your ship for another. If you could just let this slide and let me go. Before she could finish, he cut her off again. Is that the best you can come up with? Not understanding his meaning, Lacey's eyes welled up. Excuse me? He held up a wanted poster in front of her and continued. I'm having trouble believing you, given how you tried to attack me just now. Are you sure you're not a wanted criminal? Lacey raised her hand to resist this humiliation. She wondered, damn it, how is it that everyone can see through my disguise? Halid had no intention of stopping. You don't need to spin me a sad story, Veronica Hillsdale. We know each other pretty well, do we not? Our first encounter is hard to forget. Back at their meeting at the ball that day, Lacey was furious when he compared her to a dog. People were chattering noisily when the prince turned to see the scene. Lacey cheerfully waved at the prince to avoid ruining her plan. Seeing this, Halid glanced at the prince. Lacey feared she would lose face with the prince if she continued to get involved with this Halid. Halid spoke up, interrupting, sorry. I'm still not familiar with the language here. Maybe puppy is the correct term? He appeared serious as he asked. Responding with a fake smile, Lacey replied, your understanding of our language seems quite exceptional. You won't need me to interpret for you, but you need to work on reading people. At this point, the prince ran over. Veronica, maybe you shouldn't. His words were drowned out by Lacey's reprimands to Halid. She continued, because if you think I was trying to get your attention, then you're definitely mistaken. The more she spoke, the more Halid frowned. While the two were staring each other down, a voice interrupted. Excuse me. Oh, it turned out to be the girl her father had planted to win over the prince. It appears there's been some sort of misunderstanding between the two of you. Lacey silently thanked the girl in her heart. To smooth out the rude remarks I had made as Veronica. Thanks to her, the two sides were able to reach a settlement on the trade agreement. At the Hillsdale mansion, Count Hillsdale praised Lacey. Excellent work. Continue acting hostile towards Prince Halid. All the better if it leads him to be on favorable terms with the prince's fiancé. Lacey thought she shouldn't be surprised. It's better this way. After all, she didn't make a good impression at their first meeting. After that, she got deeper into her role. At the banquet that day, she retorted to him, it seems a barbarian is still a barbarian, even if it's been decked out in gold. Look at you, showing up to a banquet practically in the nude. Can't you afford decent clothes with all those riches of yours? Or do you just prefer to dress like a savage? Remembering what she had said, she really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the room, Halid was fiddling with Lacey's earrings and said, I don't remember you being this quiet, Veronica Hillsdale. In a place where magic has all but disappeared, all that remain are magical devices which are difficult to obtain and use. That's why Lacey had no choice but to use her real appearance while playing Veronica. Just who is this man? There's something suspicious about him. Destroying the magic earrings that provided her disguise, Lacey's true form gradually emerged. She did everything she could to disguise herself properly. The fact that she was Veronica, the magic earring, how does he know everything? Halid broke the silence. Answer me honestly this time. Are you a thief or a criminal on the run? Lacey mockingly asked back. Haha, which do you think I am? Halid stood up, put on his shirt, and replied, a loyal dog always follows one master. That man you were trailing behind, Daniel Lappin Weatherline. Lacey was puzzled as to why he mentioned Prince Daniel of Weldon. A jolt went through Lacey's mind when she heard Halid's next sentence. He's obviously put you up to this. Lacey sneered, thinking, I see. So he thinks a criminal on death row like me is on this ship because of the prince? Halid approached her, saying, you'd probably go to the depths of hell if Prince Daniel asked you to. Lacey could understand why he thought that way. Halid moved closer to her and continued, are you really willing to be exiled across the ocean on his behalf? Lacey smiled. It seemed her acting skills were truly perfect. Thinking this, Lacey spoke up. You missed the mark on that one. You see, I only act according to my own will. Halid sat down and said, you don't need to keep denying it. I've got a good idea of what's been going on. Hearing that, Lacey sneered and asked, which role do you fancy? Thief, stowaway, loyal dog, or that of an infamous femme fatale? Pick whichever you like, and I'll play it for you. Hearing this, Halid laughed loudly. Haha, you're saying that was all an act? Then was you being head over heels in love with that prince also just a ruse? Accepting the glass from Halid's hand, Lacey replied, of course it was. But don't expect me to reveal who I was working for. Halid was surprised. You'd go that far just to please a client? Lacey wondered if he believed her yet. As long as I'm fairly compensated. So it comes down to money. As he listened to her, Halid drank his wine, then suddenly placed the glass on the table with a clack and said, there's a place called Suriev east of Irina. It's a beautiful city surrounded by the desert. There's a room there bursting with gold, another with silver, and yet another with rubies and sapphires. You can choose whichever room you like. Hearing this, Lacey realized he wanted to hire her. Are you saying you wish to hire me? For what role? At that moment, Halid stood up, leaned toward her, and said, since you've already played the part of a femme fatale, how about acting as the bride of the century this time? One whom I fell in love with at first sight. Then he lifted her chin and smiled. I look forward to seeing you perform. Would you prefer being a stowaway? If it's too difficult to make a decision, you can always try dodging my question again. I really liked what you did earlier. As he spoke, he fiddled with the stem of Lacey's wine glass, guided her hand behind his neck, and said, if I recall, you wrapped your arms around me like this and kissed me. Did you not? Halid moved his face closer to Lacey's. The scene was very suggestive. As he was about to place a kiss on her lips, Lacey's little heart was pounding uncontrollably. Just before the kiss, Halid spoke. Well, do you have an answer? You said you can play any role. Too embarrassed by the situation, Lacey lowered her head, pushed him away, and agreed. Fine, I'll do it. Halid still held her hand and placed a kiss upon it, his eyes cold. In that case, we'll set sail immediately. Outside, the soldiers on the ship shouted loudly, prepare for departure. We're heading back to Irina. A red-haired soldier stood at the ship's bow with a contemplative expression. He spoke up upon noticing Simone approaching. This all seems rather abrupt. Simone clasped his hands behind his back and replied, there's no reason to delay leaving any longer. The prince has found the bride he's been searching for. The red-haired man laughed. I guess you're right. We've done what we came here to do. As the ship gradually moved away from the shore, Simone looked at him and said, how are you holding up? It's such a pity we're leaving without finding that lost sibling of yours. I'll be all right. Seeing as how there's been no word, I don't think they're here in Weldon either, the redhead responded. Simone nodded in satisfaction, blushing slightly. The redhead laughed and waved his hand. But more importantly, a princess consort? That's wonderful to hear. Simone suddenly remembered something. Yes. And I've more good news to share. It seems as though Lana caught a spy. The redhead was surprised. A spy? Did they follow us from Irina? Simone replied seriously. Yes. It looks like she got impatient since we're heading back to the Empire soon. She tried to seduce the prince. Shocked upon hearing this, the man exclaimed, what? A seductress? What did His Majesty do? You know what he's like, Simone emphasized. He doesn't give women the time of day. She chose the worst method possible. The sun had reached its peak. In a certain room, Lacey was sweating. Things have been going a bit too smoothly since yesterday. I haven't even signed a contract yet, and they're already treating me this well? A lavish meal was laid out before her. Unsure whether they had poisoned the food or not, but too hungry to care, she decided to start eating, beginning with that very tempting piece of smoked meat. Lacey was surprised by how delicious it was. While eating, she reminded herself, I can't let myself get distracted. Why did the ship depart the moment I boarded? It's almost as if it was planned. Is there a reason they're leaving Weldon without informing the kingdom? Why are they risking such a diplomatic discourtesy? And that man's attitude. Nothing is ever this easy. The door opened, and Halid's voice cut off Lacey's train of thought. Is the food to your liking? Lacey continued eating and said, it's not bad. Care to join me? There are some things I'd like to discuss with you. Halid asked. With me? Lacey continued. I'll cut right to the chase. I want to know what kind of scheme you've cooked up before I sign anything." At this point, Halid replied, "Scheme? Well, I suppose I was hiding something since." Hearing this, Lacey felt a twinge of worry. Meanwhile, Halid leisurely poured wine into a glass and said, "My goal was you from the very start. I hadn't planned on leaving this soon, but since the thing I've been wanting came to me on its own, what's the use in delaying things any further?" As he spoke, he licked his lips. Lacey angrily slammed the knife she was holding onto the table. "So you plan to hire an actor from Fiore from the very beginning?" Not understanding her, Halid looked puzzled, and Lacey continued, "You should have just said so from the get-go." Lifting her wine glass to drink, Lacey thought to herself, "No wonder he was so nonchalant even after recognizing I was Veronica, hired me without so much as checking my abilities, and set sail the moment I got on the ship." The more she thought about it, the more upset she became. Lacey slammed the glass down on the table, tossed her hair, and said, "It's all making sense now." She believed he did all this just because of the actress who played Veronica. "You were feeling me out this whole time to get me to reveal myself, huh? Does that mean you recognized me from the start?" Halid replied, "How could I not recognize you?" Clenching her fists on the table, Lacey said, "The poison under my fingernails, my magical device, you already knew about them." Thinking of this, she lowered her head, tears welling up. "I was the only one from Fiore who received a magical device from the madam. I thought it was a secret between the two of us, but it looks like she sold me out. Now that I no longer have any use in Weldon, did I get played?" Lacey gripped the knife behind her back. What will she use that knife for? Perhaps to assassinate Halid? Will Lacey's journey of revenge go smoothly? Don't forget to like and subscribe to Revenping Review to follow the Manhwa Lies Become You.